RFK Jr. making a lot of waves on the Democrat side already, or from the Democrat Party, I should say. I think his main base of support is probably among Republicans who really appreciate much of what he has had to say. The Biden White House, for now at least, is still, it seems, planning to have Joe Biden be the guy. And they don't want any noise. They don't want any distractions from the rest of the parties as it's going, because they need the Democrat uniparty, at least, to be united on this one. And RFK Jr. is still running. He doesn't care. He's still in the mix. Given the factors at play here with Joe Biden's age and infirmity and everything else, it's entirely reasonable and understandable why some Democrats might want to have some other options out there and other people that are discussing what's going on. But Biden doesn't like this. Clay just brought up that RFK Jr. has said, and I mean, I would just note, we have to always say RFK Jr. because of what happened to Robert F. Kennedy. We all remember historically, right? So that's why we don't just refer to him as RFK. And we know that bringing up RFK is a moment in American history that it was a tragic and awful day. And RFK Jr., Clay, not getting Secret Service protection from the White House. Is there, I'll be honest, I don't know what the technicalities are of this, but my assumption is if the Biden White House wanted to give him Secret Service protection, they certainly could. What do you think?
Yeah, let me read the tweet that he put out this morning, which is one of the first things I read when I got up. This is what he put out. Since the assassination of my father in 1968, candidates for president are provided Secret Service protection, but not me. Typical turnaround time for pro forma protection requests from presidential candidates is 14 days. After 88 days of no response and after several follow-ups by our campaign, the Biden administration just denied our request. Secretary Mayorkas says, I have determined that Secret Service protection for Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is not warranted at this time. Our campaign's request included a 67-page report from the world's leading protection firm detailing unique and well-established security and safety risks aside from commonplace death threats. That is from RFK Jr. To me, Buck, this just further epitomizes what is, at its base, a very cruel White House. Now, I would suspect this is political in some way, and this is an attempt by Joe Biden and the White House to claim that he doesn't have serious challengers. If I'm working through and trying to rationalize why they would make this choice, it's that, if we give Secret Service protection to RFK Jr., this gives him some sort of green light to the argument that he is a legitimate challenger for the presidential nomination of the Democrats. We refuse, and again, this is me talking as if I'm them, we refuse to acknowledge that that might be the case, and therefore we are not going to provide it. Now, Buck, this should be, to me, pro forma, because if something now happens to RFK Jr. on the campaign trail, my first thought is going to be, this is on the Biden administration. So I don't understand, and you could say, well, cost, like there's only 3 really seriously announced contenders, and in some polls, RFK Jr. has gotten as high as 20% support. I don't know what exactly you want the threshold for Secret Service protection to be. I don't know that Asa Hutchinson needs Secret Service protection running for the Republican nomination. Maybe he has it. I don't know. I'm not trying to take a shot at him. Just, is 1% the threshold to justify that you need support? I think most people would have no idea who Asa Hutchinson is. RFK Jr. is driving a lot of attention. He has massive crowds when he speaks all over the country. He is certainly a bona fide, in my opinion, presidential candidate. The fact that the Biden White House, according to RFK Jr., would make this determination is frankly unacceptable.
I think it just goes to the level of, to your point about the optics and the perception of it, the level of sensitivity that this Biden White House has, that it's a little bit like if there starts to be a growing sense that there's a real challenge to Joe Biden, then that perception will become the reality. Then there is a real challenge to Joe Biden. And they know that. The only way, I mean, the reason I've thought all along here that Biden is going to be the guy who runs for the Democrats, that I don't mean he's going to be the guy who wins the presidency. I just mean he's going to be the Democrats' nominee, is because he's president. There's huge advantages baked into that. And, they're just kind of using the machinery and hoping they can just pull them over the finish line, right? I mean, there's really a replay of what they did in 2020. If Democrats start to feel like, hold on, there's a real possibility of something else going on here. I mean, look, Clay, I'll say it. I still think that Democrats, in terms of the Democrat establishment, some of them are very, very surly about the whole Bernie thing with Hillary. Yeah. They want those super left wingers voting Democrat, obviously, but the whole thing is like the socialists get a pat on the head while they get to run they get to run a more standard Democrat candidate like Joe Biden. So they don't want any of this nonsense. They don't like anyone stepping out of line and messing with the power base.
This is also, Buck, why when the whole Hillary Clinton email hack scandal happened, for those of you, the campaign hack I'm talking about, and everybody was so fired up about it, I actually think that was important for the American people to know. If one of her idiot campaign advisors hadn't managed to get hacked by responding to, I think it was like one of those, unfortunate spamming emails where it says, hey, your password's been stolen. I mean, never respond to any of those, by the way. But if someone hadn't responded in that way, Buck, we would have never known that the DNC fix was in for Hillary. The only reason we found out about that, they would have kept it quiet. They would have gone to their graves, never admitting that they were engaged in a conspiracy to make sure that Hillary Clinton was the nominee in 2016 instead of Bernie Sanders. The only reason we found out about that was the Russian email hack, which I would argue is 100% in the American political interest. I think you should want to know that if you're a Democrat voter or if you're a voter in the United States. I mean, if I found out, and I bet you would want to know too, if I found out that we've got a ton of people running for the Republican nomination for president, if I found out that the RNC was trying to rig it for one of the candidates and not treating everybody fairly, I think that would be totally unacceptable. I bet you do too. And I would want to know if it were going on, because I want it to be a fair race to see who's going to be the Republican nominee going forward. And so I think that is super significant in terms of that information that came out. But just, I mean, I used to say that a lot of big organizations need a director of common sense, just someone who looks at the overall decision and says, yeah, this is a bad decision. And I feel like the Biden administration in particular, Buck, if you or I, reasonable people, if the Biden administration came to us and they said, hey, RFK's given us a super documented request for Secret Service protection, his own dad was killed, assassinated, which is why candidates now get protection from Secret Service. What do you think? Should we deny this? I would say no. You should give him Secret Service protection. This isn't a hard call, just from a common sense, reasonable, rational, decent human being perspective.
I wanted to pull up the last polls that I could here, just to give everyone a sense of where the Democrat race stands. And we know we're just a few weeks out. It's kind of funny, Clay. We haven't really been talking about the upcoming debate that much because I think that as long as there's the consensus seems to be right now that Trump isn't going to show up for that debate, which means that it almost feels like it's a little bit like the T-ball or the. Do
you agree with that decision, by the way, for Trump if he doesn't show up? What would you advise him if he was asking you?
I think that Trump does not have to show up at this phase to the debates, given the numbers. But I do think that Trump does need to show up at some point in the primaries. When I say needs to, should is a better way of putting it. Even if he could win without doing it, I think it's important for people to see where he stands among the Republican field before going up against the Democrat machine, right? And I think it's important for him to flex those muscles, so to speak, and to have to take that incoming and show everybody, remind everybody. If they're, maybe they're all set on Trump, I think people should still be reminded of why if Trump is their candidate. And we'll see. It does turn into a strategic decision, of course, based on whether or not anyone's getting close to him. I'm looking at the polls right now, meaning, if all of a sudden Ron DeSantis or Vivek, I get people reaching out to me from life, not from politics, who know me, it's funny too. They're like, "Hey, you should check out this guy Vivek." I'm like, "I've known
As
him
if
for
we
years."
don't know who. Yeah.
No. I've known him for years. He was on the show last week. He's a friend of mine. I just texted him the other day. Like, trust me. Like, I'm aware of Vivek. They're like, "There's this fellow that's very smart in the Republican." If you want to talk to me more about Asa and why I should look at Asa, that's one thing. But trust me, I'm very aware of Vivek. But looking at some of these numbers right now. I'm sorry. What I was saying was just that if it gets close enough, if it gets to like I think within 20 points is striking distance. Within 10 is a race. That's kind of what it feels like to most people in a primary. Then I think Trump will probably have to. Right now, the latest numbers show Biden at 63, Kennedy at 15.
Yeah.
Now, okay, that's a big lead, but Biden is the president, and for registered Democrats, 15% of them, that's as of this past week or a week ago, to be in favor of RFK Jr. in that way it's noteworthy. There's something going on.
It certainly meets the threshold to me of, you should get Secret Service protection. And the fact that they're not willing to do it, to me, makes my eyebrows raise, and it's a sign of weakness, not strength in the Biden administration. It's that they're terrified of admitting that there's actually a Democrat primary race.
Yeah, I think that there's a recognition that they feel like if they start to allow people to think that maybe that there is a primary to be had here, then there will be one, right? It's almost like they've just got to control the mindset of the Democrat base in all of this. Interesting. I haven't seen the breakdown of this. I mean, one thing that we know is so important for a Democrat primary, and this is what delivered it to Biden the last time around, is black Democrat primary voters in states like South Carolina, for example. I haven't seen what RFK's breakdown is of support. I'd be curious to see, who is. I know it's Democrats, but which Democrats are supporting him? Because if you did think that, and just to be clear, I still think it's going to be Biden, and then they're going to shut this down. They're going to Bernie Sanders him. They're going to do whatever they have to do to make sure that he doesn't have a real chance. But I would be curious to see where his support's coming from, Clay.